Hello and welcome back, or welcome to Version of Events. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Ellie, and this is News Roundup episode 11. We're just working our way to 20 episodes.
Woo! And this week we are back to our usual format of 4 separate cases to share with you all.
Indeed, back to normal. And we're starting off with a case that we've been following since it first broke. In fact, it was so local to Jess that she was able to go along to the court hearings. So, Jess, please tell us everything that you know about Reanne Coulson.
Reanne Coulson, a 34-year-old mum from Coventry in the UK, was last seen alive on May the 21st this year. She was leaving a food bank at St Mary and St Benedict's Church on Raglan Street in Hillfields at around 9:46 p.m. When she didn't contact her family on her and her twin sister's birthday, June the 17th, police began looking for her, appealing for information. There were appeals by the family, and that was when this case kind of started moving.
Yeah, I remember you picking up her missing image from Coventry police, and we both just automatically had a feeling, didn't we? Especially with it being so close to you. Like, it kind of hit home for us, I think.
Yeah, it really did. So St Mary and St Benedict's is a couple of minutes walk down the road from where I go to church. I know the area well, and it's not a nice area to be walking around in at that time of night, and it was immediate concern, I think, from both of us for Reanne. So after the investigation started, an arrest was made fairly quickly on June the 22nd. That was of a 53-year-old man who was known to Reanne on suspicion of kidnap and murder. He was subsequently released on bail. And then in the early hours of June the 24th, a second arrest was made, this time of a 42-year-old man on suspicion of murder. Police described his arrest as a significant development. And then at around 4 p.m. on June the 25th, a third man, aged 38, was arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. The next day, a police statement sadly confirmed that they believed Reanne was deceased, and they began to search for her body in the Binley Woods area, which is on the outskirts of Coventry.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there's 3 men arrested. One you've mentioned was released on bail.
Yeah.
And now we believe that Reanne, sadly, isn't with us anymore.
Yeah.
That's quite the development very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly after the significant development of the second arrest, yeah.
Wow.
So on June the 27th, police confirmed that they had found a body in Binley Woods, and they believed it to be Reanne. And the 2 men who were still in custody were charged, and they were named as Mohammed Durnion, 42, who's charged with murder, and Adam Moore, 38, charged with assisting an offender.
So what happened with the third guy? Do we know anything about that, or has that not been discussed?
That's not been discussed. Having been to the hearings, there is no suggestion that the first man who was arrested is involved. So I would assume that will be no further action, because the police and the Crown Prosecution Service they've charged.
Sure.
They believe they found the 2 people responsible.
Sure. Okay.
And so that was the Friday, June the 27th. There were hearings in the Magistrates' Court the next day for Mohammed Durnion and Adam Moore. So I went along to that. Durnion's hearing was first, and that only lasted around 5 minutes. He confirmed his name and date of birth, which is April 1983. And the charge specified he's accused of murdering Reanne on May the 21st, so the last day she was seen alive. Durnion also asserted that he was of no fixed abode. He wore a grey shirt and grey tracksuit bottoms. He's white with dark brown hair and a dark brown beard. And he showed no emotion at all throughout the hearing.
Wow. I can't imagine that. I would imagine that if I personally was charged with murder, not that it would ever happen, but I imagine I would be showing quite a bit of emotion.
Yeah, it was... Clients are generally advised not to show emotion, but it was strange to see.
Yeah.
Moore's hearing was a little bit later, and that lasted around an hour, including around 10 minutes during which the magistrates retired to consider his bail application. Moore spoke to confirm his name, his date of birth, which is October 1986. He gave an address in court which was not his address, it was his mother's address. So we're not sharing that. His charge is assisting an offender with disposing of a body, and again a date is specified of May 22nd, so the day after Reanne was last seen, the day after police believe she was murdered.
Wow.
More, it's really sad, isn't it?
It is just so sad. Yeah.
Moore wore a black polo shirt. He's muscular, white. He has a shaven head and kind of a long ginger beard. And Moore, like Durnion, showed no emotion throughout the hearing.
Okay.
As mentioned, his lawyer did make a bail application that was rejected. And he also insisted that Moore would be pleading not guilty to the charge.
Okay, that's interesting. Interesting news. I'm kind of glad that his bail application was rejected just based on the severity of the charge.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable with someone charged with such a serious offence. And it is not specific to Moore, it is to anyone charged with such an offence.
Yeah.
That's an offence you get remanded in custody for.
Yeah, absolutely. And pleading not guilty as well. So we will, if assuming that he does decide to plead not guilty when it comes to their plea hearing, we will have a trial to...
That is how it looks at the moment,
to
yeah.
attend with.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before going to these hearings, I did some digging online and I found some more information about the defendants and how they are connected to each other. So firstly, Mohammed or Mo Isa Durnion was formerly known as Alan Durnion. He started a haulage business, ME Haulage. I think the ME must stand for Mohammed Isa, in October 2022. The company was registered on Coronation Road, which is just half a mile from where Reanne was last seen at St Mary and St Benedict's.
Okay, so he has knowledge of the local area.
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say, yeah. The company was wound up in February 2024, and Mohammed began working for AAA Home Improvements, which is run by his co-defendant, Adam Ryan Moore.
I was wondering what the link was between them, because it's quite the thing to ask somebody to help you dispose of a body. You have to be quite close to that person, I would imagine.
Yeah, and obviously we're not saying that is what happened. They're presumed innocent, but the police and Crown Prosecution Service believe that is what happened, and they must have a basis for at least connecting these two men. They're not strangers to one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, the two are closely connected. That's evidenced by their business partnership, their social media postings, and they have a dog that they both walk. I don't know whose dog it is, but they both walk it and take pictures with it. So yeah, there's definitely a close connection. And something else that was interesting in the social media posts, on June the 7th, so that's after Reanne is believed to have been murdered, and while her family didn't know where she was, Ryan Moore posted a picture of a bulldozer, a man going on a bulldozer rampage, with the text, "Never forget what happens when reasonable men are pushed to do unreasonable things."
This to me seems like one of those posts that Andrew Tate would make. Like, it's quite misogynistic.
It's very macho coded, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's just interesting timing.
I agree the timing is interesting, and people might wonder who are the reasonable men and what are the unreasonable things. We're not saying that it is connected at all. It's just that is something that people would understandably ask. And a further link between the two men that emerged in the court hearing itself was that there's quite a few addresses involved in this case, but Moore had recently been staying with his partner at an unknown address. And while Moore was there, Durnion had been staying in, probably subletting Moore's home in Hainault, and that is believed to be the crime scene. So Durnion had been staying in his co-defendant's home. So these men are linked.
Wow.
So Durnion was remanded in custody until July the 1st, and Moore was remanded in custody until July the 24th, both of them for hearings at Warwick Crown Court. And so on July the 1st, I went to Durnion's Crown Court hearing. This hearing was very brief. It was maybe 10 minutes long, but it was very informative as well. The hearing was before Her Honour Judge Dano, and Durnion spoke only to confirm his name. Alex de Sortoy was appearing via video link for the Crown Prosecution Service, informed the court that, as evidence is still being gathered in the case, he could only give a very cautious estimate of a 6-week trial. He confirmed that one of the pieces of evidence the prosecution is still waiting for is Reanne's cause of death to be determined.
Okay, so that seems to me like they might have quite a lot of evidence that they are looking at. I know he's being cautious, but a 6-week trial is quite long.
Yeah, when he said 6 weeks, I think I was surprised sitting in the gallery, because that is a very long trial. And both the defence barrister, as an aside, I couldn't quite catch his name. It was something like Mr. Hunker, but that's the best I can do. But the defence barrister and Judge Dano expressed surprise and scepticism that 6 weeks would be needed for the trial, with the defence actually suggesting that it wouldn't take any more than 3 weeks. And
okay,
that seems, I mean, obviously I don't know the facts of the case, the evidence in the case, but 3 weeks generally, that's much more what one would expect. Durnion did not apply for bail, and he did not enter a plea, but his lawyer indicated that he would also plead not guilty, and he stated, quote, "I can tell you it's a firm denial," end quote, of the charge of murder.
Okay, so that's both of them potentially getting to their plea hearing and pleading not guilty. Does that mean there's two separate trials, or?
That hasn't been confirmed yet. I
Okay,
suspect it will be a joint trial.
okay,
So and part of the reason for that is that one trial date was set rather than two, and that was November 24th, 2025. That's only that's not set in stone. That could be moved, but that was what it was set for. And Durnion was remanded back into custody until the July 24th plea and trial preparation hearing, also at Warwick Crown
okay.
Court. And that is the same date as Moore's hearing because it will be a joint hearing. So again, that's another reason that I do think they're looking at a joint trial in this
A
case.
joint trial.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's the same alleged, it's the same crime that they are.
Yeah.
So, yeah. There's something that I want to finish on. It's a note of sadness, to be honest, because obviously the entire case is very sad. What has happened to Reanne is very sad. But I was the only person from any media outlet who was present in court for any of these hearings. This is not a small thing that's happened. This is not, this is a big deal. It's a woman was murdered. It matters.
It does matter.
She went missing. Her family didn't know where she was. And her body was found in the woods. Reanne should not be forgotten just because she was a sex worker. She was a mom. She was a sister. She was a daughter, an auntie, and she was a friend. Reanne deserves to live. Reanne deserves justice, and her family deserve justice. And she should not be forgotten in death. And I will be at as many of the hearings as I can be. If there is a trial, I intend to be at every day of that trial because Rianne's life mattered.
It absolutely does matter. And it's absolutely shocking that you were the only media outlet present in court for the hearings.
No one has yet reported that this case is going to trial. That's not been in the press yet. We shouldn't be the people breaking that story. This is wrong.
Yes, it is. It is wrong. But I do want to say that on the posts that we made about Reanne, I've noticed more than a handful of comments from people who did know Reanne, and they are all beautiful tributes to a wonderful human being, because they all speak of how they will never forget her kindness, how they will never forget her friendship.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important to mention. That shows just who Reanne was.
Yeah.
She was more than her circumstances in life. She was more than her lot in life. And her lot in life was not her fault. And it's important to remember that. And what happened to her was also not her fault. The only fault in this situation lays with the people that killed her, whoever that may turn out to be.
Yeah.
I'm not saying,
of course,
specifically who it is, but that's where the blame lays. And
Yeah.
I think that it's so important that we keep reporting this case and we carry on doing it because it is the right thing to do. Because she deserves the airtime and the space. She deserves our energy and time. And she's worth it. She's worth reporting on.
Yeah. So yeah, I will give a next update in this case on after the hearing on July the 24th. We'll see where things stand then. But yeah, that's Reanne Coulson, a tragic loss of life, and our thoughts are with Rianne's family and friends.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that leads us on then, Ellie, to our next case today, and you are looking at a case out of Idaho.
It is indeed. It's our first case that we're going to mention today that's out of Idaho. And it involves the death of 2 US firefighters who were shot dead and a third was wounded after a man intentionally started a fire in order to lure first responders in so that he could begin shooting at them in what has been described as a total ambush.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my reaction when I read the article, the breaking news article. Investigators do say that the gunman acted alone, that he began shooting at the firefighters and law enforcement in Canfield Mountain, which is just north of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, on Sunday afternoon. They came under sniper fire as they responded to reports of the fire. So eventually a SWAT team was brought in who later located a deceased male close to where the attack took place.
Wow. Did you say sniper fire?
Yes. Yeah, he had... I'll go into what weapon he had later on, but it was very much sniper style and very dangerous. Because the fire itself actually grew to cover 20 acres and it continued to burn into Sunday night.
Wow.
Sheriff Bob Norris told the media, "We do believe that the suspect started the fire." Norris also told the media in a late-night press conference, "This was a total ambush. These firefighters did not stand a chance. We did lose a Coeur d'Alene firefighter, and we also lost a firefighter from the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. A third is fighting for his life, but he is in stable condition." I don't understand how people's minds work to do things like this, to commit arson in the first place, and then to shoot at the first responders is crazy.
Yeah. This is... I guess there's no suggestion of... no idea of what the motive is yet.
No idea of the motive as yet, or at least not that they're telling the media. I'm sure that more will come to light. This was only reported earlier this week, on Monday. So I'm sure that their investigation as it grows will come to figure out exactly what the motive was in this case. So the first report of the fire was around 13:21 PST, and reports that they were being shot at emerged 40 minutes later. More than 300 law enforcement officers from the city, county, state, and federal levels responded to the scene of the shooting, including 2 helicopters with heat-seeking technology and snipers on board. So, yeah.
300, that's...
It's a
Wow.
massive operation.
Yeah.
The barrage of gunfire went on for several hours, and the suspect was found using his mobile phone location. As mentioned above, he was found dead, but it is currently unclear whether he was hit by law enforcement or he committed suicide. So, to keep everybody safe, a shelter-in-place notice was issued to local residents, and that was lifted 7 hours later. So, here's where we get into the type of gun that was used. Norris said the shooter used a high-powered sporting rifle to shoot at first responders, with officers initially unsure of the number of shooters involved in the ambush. Authorities would not give more details on weapons recovered, but Norris did say that the officers would likely find more guns on Monday, the 30th of June, once the fire was fully extinguished.
So you say they initially weren't sure how many shooters there was?
Yeah.
I guess there must have been a very significant barrage of gunfire.
Yeah. They thought there could have been as many as 4 shooters.
Wow.
So that indicates the rapid nature of the barrage of gunfire. As we mentioned, the motive is still unknown, and Norris didn't provide any details on it either. He did say that a preliminary investigation had found that there was only the one gunman. He also said that the gunman appeared to have run while firing, and he may have stashed weapons in different places. He also explained that the fire was encroaching on the location of the body, forcing them to do a very quick search of the scene and then remove the body quickly to a safe location before the fire reached it, which is obviously not ideal for an investigation, but you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very complex crime scene, so...
Yeah.
Wow.
And officers have released a statement asking people to stay away from the area and to not fly drones over the area, because obviously that could compromise their investigation.
Yeah, don't go to the crime scene seems like pretty good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't fly drones over it, even better advice. I'm sure that the scene will be guarded for quite a while they search. And I will update you on the progress of this case as and when we know more. At the moment, that is all that we know. But our thoughts go out to the families of the 3 firefighters that were shot, the 2 that died, and the 1 that's in hospital fighting for his life. Our thoughts go out to their families and their friends, and we hope that the injured firefighter has a speedy recovery and is able to return to some semblance of normality.
Yeah, most definitely. Losing their lives just going to the scene of an emergency. It's terrifying.
It is absolutely terrifying, and I imagine there'll be a lot of PTSD among the firefighters that were involved that weren't physically harmed. Because, I'm sure they're prepared for the fact that they do a dangerous job and fire is unpredictable and that they could lose their lives in the line of their work, but not being shot at.
Yeah, like you say, they know that fire is dangerous, fire's unpredictable, but fire doesn't shoot at you.
No. No, it does not. Yeah, absolutely insane case there. But let's move on to this week's Missing and Marginalised.
This week on Missing and Marginalised, both of the cases we're looking at are young women who are missing from the UK. Chelsea Perry is missing from Coventry. She's 32 years old, around 5 foot 6 inches tall. She has brown eyes and light brown hair. She was last seen early on the 30th of June. If you know anything about Chelsea's disappearance or if you see her, please call 999 and quote PID 360692. PID 360692.
And then we have Alaya Akidi Morrow, who's 14, and she was reported missing from the W10 area of West London on Wednesday, the 11th of June. She was last seen at 2:35 p.m. wearing her school uniform, which includes a black blazer, a white shirt, a black skirt, and black and pink striped tie. She is of slim build and has light brown hair that she often wears in a bun. Alaya is known to visit the Dollis Hill area of northwest London. If you know anything about Alaya's disappearance, or if you see her, you can contact the police on 101 or 999 and quote the reference CAD 8071/11 June. That's CAD 8071/11 June.
Okay. And Ellie, we've got the next short case on here, which is the murder of Daniel Andorin.
Indeed, Daniel Andorin was fatally slashed by Marcus Monzo, 37, with a samurai sword just minutes after Daniel left his home in Hainault on the 30th of April last year. Daniel was just 14 at the time of his death.
Wow, that's horrible.
Yeah, it is horrible. But it gets worse because Monzo went on a 20-minute rampage with his sword and attacked 3 other members of the public and police officers as well that were gravely injured. As such, the judge sentenced Monzo to life with a 40-year minimum term, which, given he's 37, will make him 77 when he can first apply for parole. So it's virtually a life sentence.
Yeah, it sounds like a strong sentence.
Yeah.
Which is good, given the gravity of his crime.
Absolutely. During the sentencing, the judge described a peaceful, busy scene, and he described it as being devastated as members of the public were attacked. Police officers were gravely injured. A couple were terrified in their own home, and a clever, talented, much-loved young boy was killed by a savage blow from a sword. You, Marcos Arduni Monzo, did all of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Judges' sentencing remarks are often really kind of eloquent and put it across very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, a clever, talented, much-loved young boy.
Yeah.
Senseless tragedy, I guess.
It is very senseless. It's a very good word to describe it, actually. Daniel's father, Ebenezer Andorin, condemned the actions of Monzo, describing them as wicked, and then describing losing his son as his worst nightmare, which is any parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah, sure.
Speaking publicly about his son's death for the first time, he described the first time he saw Daniel's injured body lying in the street. He said, "I did not realize that it was Daniel at first, but as I got closer, I recognized the school sports clothes and saw his face. He was laying in a pool of blood and had a deep cut to his face running from the side of his mouth to the back of his neck. He was motionless. I knew at once that he was dead, but I reached down, called his name, and held his head.
Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah, it's really sad.
So Daniel was wearing his school clothes.
Yeah, his school PE kit. He's just a kid.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Those words were very moving.
We're both doing it today.
Yeah.
Yeah, this matters to us.
After a few moments, he called Daniel's mother, Grace. And when she arrived on the scene, she screamed and cried as she witnessed paramedics desperately trying to resuscitate her son, who died later in hospital. So bless his heart, he clung on for as long as he could. During Monzo's trial, the court heard that he drove his van into Donald Iwule, who ran away screaming as his attacker got out of the van and came at him with a samurai sword. Monzo then attacked Daniel from behind, causing the fatal wounds to his neck. When PC Yasmin Metchen Whitefield tried to intervene, Monzo struck her repeatedly, leaving her with what were described as savage blows. He burst into the home of Henry de los Rios Polenia and Cindy Arias, who were asleep with their young child nearby. It's just a nightmare.
Oh my, it's like something out of a horror film.
It is, you just read my mind. Inspector Malloy Campbell then cornered Monzo in a car park and ran in with his baton to defend himself against the samurai sword, but was slashed on the hand. Officers eventually detained the delivery driver, who had become psychotic after taking cannabis.
So I was going to ask about motive, but it sounds like no motive.
No.
Like a psychotic break.
But that said, afterwards, it came out that Monzo had viewed far-right and misogynistic content on the internet, specifically social media, and claimed to have an alternate personality of a professional assassin.
Oh, okay, so perhaps not quite as simple as just becoming psychotic.
Yeah,
one day.
The ideas were there, I think. And then the psychotic break just made them
into reality.
Of course, the jury found Monzo guilty of all charges, which included Daniel's murder, the attempted murder of Iwule, Arias, and Metchen Whitefield, the wounding of De Los Rios Polonia and Campbell with intent. He was also convicted of aggravated burglary and having an article with a blade or point. He admitted that the samurai sword used to kill Daniel was his, along with a katana sword found inside his van. I think that shows some intent.
Yeah, I was about to say the fact that he had these things ready to go, not just kind of somewhere in his home, perhaps on display, but in his van.
Yeah.
He's got two weapons. That shows kind of preparation, which isn't something that's usually associated with someone acting by reason of insanity.
Yeah, I agree.
Which I suppose is why he was convicted of the full charge of murder.
Yeah.
Rather than
manslaughter or a different charge, because in the UK there's no murder 1, murder 2. It's just murder, then manslaughter. Just to explain that.
Yeah.
But the result of his 20-minute rampage was the death of a 14-year-old and the severe wounding of several others. Well done to the 2 very brave police officers who did their best to intervene and got hurt in the line of duty.
Yeah. defending his kind of... It sounds like having almost a sword fight with a baton
yeah,
and the samurai sword, and just... It's surreal. It's hard to believe this could actually happen. But...
yeah, it is. It's just insane. And Hainault's a very normal area, and people were just getting on with their day until he turned up. I find it baffling. This case has really got to me.
Yeah, it's just so senseless and tragic. And the victim couldn't be any more innocent. Just a 14-year-old kid in his school PE kit.
Yeah. And a kid that, when you see his pictures, looks like such a kind young man and a loving young man. I know it's strange to say that based off of pictures, but I think you can just tell from his aura, from his eyes, and the way that his family describe him as well.
Yeah.
So with that, that's all that I have for this case, and we're going to move on to the murder of Sara Lynn Colucci.
Yeah, that's right. So on June the 17th this year, Michael Colucci's trial was about to begin for the 2015 murder of his wife, Sara. The jury had been selected. As far as they knew, they were waiting to be brought into court and sworn in. But, in fact, Judge Young was announcing an 11th hour ruling in the courtroom. And that ruling was that he dismissed the indictment, so the trial just did not happen. But that's the kind of the end bit, the latest bit. How did we get here? Well, we need to go back to May the 20th, 2015 in Summerville, South Carolina. At around 7:20 p.m, Michael Colucci made a frantic 911 call in which he told the operator that Sara had tried to hang herself with a hose. EMTs raced to the scene. That scene was a storefront or a warehouse that Michael and Sara Colucci rented for their jewelry business. And the EMTs found Sara's body with a garden hose wrapped around her neck, the other end of the hose looped over the top of a 6-foot chain link fence. But far from the kind of the scene that Michael described, the frantic CPR, the EMTs testified that Sara's body was not in a position consistent with CPR. And not only that, she was already blue and cold to the touch. They testified that they didn't attempt any life-saving measures because it was clear that she was already deceased.
We're going to play that 911 call for you now.
Michael? They're on the way, okay? Please. I need to figure out what she did. She tried to hang herself with a hose. Please. Oh my God. Come on, baby. Come on. Yeah. Okay, Michael, did you cut her down or what? No, I just cut her down. She was standing near the door. I think she got open it. Okay, they're on their way, okay? Are you still doing CPR? Yes, sir. Is anybody else there with you? Yes, sir. Is she on the ground right now? Yes, sir. Was she on the ground when you found her? Yes, sir. Okay. Michael?
Yes, sir.
They see you?
I don't see him yet. Oh my God. Come on, baby. Oh my God. Please turn the purple. Oh my God. Come on, down. Please, baby.
Okay, Michael, they're there. Make sure they find you, okay?
Come on, go. Come on. Please.
Do you see somebody? Okay, Michael, I'm going to hang up, okay?
I'm going to hang up.
They're there. I'm going to hang up. Michael.
Oh my God.
Michael. Michael. Michael.
Oh,
So yeah, that's not the entire call. Parts of it are inaudible, but you get the bulk of it there. There are parts of that don't sound entirely genuine to me, but people make up their own minds. I think it's not so much that he doesn't sound genuine, but we know that things that he says are not consistent with what anyone saw. Sara didn't appear to have been given CPR, and she was very much already passed away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that he claims to have given her CPR when she was found hanging from the fence.
Yeah. While investigators looked into Sara's death, Michael told them that they'd stopped off there at this storefront so she could use the toilet. But this seemed strange to them, and it seems strange to me, because at the storefront is only a 15-minute drive from their home, so they could have just continued on to get there.
Yeah. I mean, either she was really desperate or it's just a fabrication.
Yeah, and she could have been really desperate. It's one of the many things that didn't seem quite right about Michael's story.
I agree with you. It does seem odd. I would rather wait to go at home than in a storefront warehouse situation.
Yeah, for sure. And there were other, perhaps bigger details that seemed unusual and suspicious. For example, Michael was sitting in the car, which was only around 25 feet from where Sara's body was located. And the investigators said there was a clear line of sight from Michael in the car to where Sara was found hanging. So he could see, if he'd been looking, everything that she was doing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And not only that, when the investigators showed up, Michael's lip was bleeding and he had scratches along his arms and his hands.
Not suspicious at all.
Yeah, you know, sometimes when you're reading the facts of a case and there's one sentence, one piece of evidence that stops you in your tracks and you go, he did it.
Yeah.
That was that for me.
Yeah.
It was I've been reading for a while when we got there, and that just said, yeah, that's one too many things, one too many suspicious things.
Yeah. I mean, we've discussed this case between us yesterday.
Quite a lot.
Yeah. And I know I felt that this seemed to be premeditated. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys think, and you'll have to let us know when Jess has finished reading about the case.
Yeah, please do let us know what you think, because we found this case really fascinating to look at. The medical examiner who performed Sara's autopsy ruled that she died of asphyxia to the neck, which could be caused by either hanging or strangulation. And they listed her manner of death as undetermined. So not homicide, not suicide. They couldn't determine what her manner of death was. Michael Colucci maintained then and maintains still now that he found Sara's body hanging. She would presumably had tried to hang herself, although that he did apparently suggest that it was an accident at one point.
I just had a thought that if he was sat in direct line of sight of everything she was doing and she tried to commit suicide or had an accident, why was she left there blue and cold? Why didn't he help her get down?
Well, quite, yeah. That's the key. That's one of the key questions, I think. And he's sort of suggested sometimes that he might have been asleep, but that seems really strange to me. You're driving home, you stop off at a warehouse so your wife can use the toilet, have a nap in the car, and wake up and
she's dead.
Yeah. It doesn't sound... It's a very strange story.
It is.
And the strange things happen, but...
This is strange thing after strange thing after strange thing, really.
Yeah, exactly. Michael's defence have made quite a big deal about the date of Sara's death, May the 20th, because her first husband, Michael Vieira, died on May the 18th in 2007, so only 2 days from the anniversary is when Sara died. And Michael Vieira died in really tragic and bizarre circumstances. He took LSD, acid, had a bad trip, and stabbed himself to death, essentially.
Wow.
So obviously that was very traumatic for Sara.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I can imagine.
I can't imagine losing someone like that.
No, I can see why that would be so traumatic for Sara.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, Michael said that she was very distressed that day because they had visited his grave. And yeah, she was very upset, according to Michael. But despite his professions of innocence, in May 2016, a year after Sara's death, he was charged with murder. He was initially denied bond, so he was held in jail, but a few weeks after that it was granted. So, while awaiting trial for murder, Michael Colucci was walking around free, essentially.
I just don't agree with that. I think if you're charged with murder, you should be held in remand until your trial, personally.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and if there's enough evidence to charge someone with murder and put them on trial, law enforcement must believe that they are a dangerous person. So, yeah. And while he was out on bond, there were actually quite a few allegations that he had violated his conditions. So, for example, in June 2016, that's just a month after he was charged, Michael's own stepfather reported him for an alleged breach of his bond. And then again in May 2017, the Attorney General tried to have Michael's bond revoked after he changed his address without informing the court, just decided to move. And that attempt to revoke his bond was denied.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it seems like he got away with quite a lot.
Yeah.
So in 2018, the case went to trial. And Michael had this kind of high-powered, well-known, very experienced local attorney called Andy Savage. And I've watched some of the trial back, and Savage was very kind of theatrical. He's a very effective lawyer. And at one point during a cross-examination, he wrapped a garden hose that was around Sara's neck. He wrapped it around his own neck to make a point. And it was... I can see why that would engage a jury,
Yeah.
most definitely. However, despite the theatrics with the hose, none of the experts who testified at trial for either side testified that the marks on Sara's neck were consistent with the hose. So something else
Okay.
appears to have caused those marks.
Well, that's interesting information. Perhaps her death was asphyxia or strangulation. Perhaps she was strangled.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's not been quite clear. The state's theory is that Michael strangled Sara either with his hands or with a ligature or both. But the thing they were very insistent on was it was not the hose.
Yeah.
So in this first trial, at the end of it, the jurors were unable to reach a verdict, and it ended with a hung jury and a mistrial.
A shame.
So, yeah, a real shame, and no end to that for Sara's family.
Yeah.
So after that mistrial, Colucci continued to be out on bond, and continued to almost get in trouble, be kind of close to trouble a few times. For example, in August 2019, the police were called by his then girlfriend, and she told them that around a week earlier, she'd been in what she called a physical altercation with Michael. And when she went into detail about the altercation, she said that Michael had broken her arm when he picked her up and threw her on the ground.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and to be clear, Michael Colucci was not charged in relation to this alleged assault, but it builds up a picture of kind of
who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throughout the time that he's been on bond, Michael Colucci's also been accused of theft repeatedly. So one of those accusations was from Sara's parents, who said that when Michael left the home that he had lived in with Sara, he took half the stuff that was in the house with him. So just took it with him.
Oh, okay.
And that home and the contents that Michael was taking were owned by Sara's parents.
Ah.
So to behave like, to allegedly do that while on bond for murder, that's...
And to your in-laws.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's entitlement or just a sign of a man who has gotten away with far too much in his life.
Yeah.
As well as that, and yeah, he was also accused of theft by a number of customers of his jewellery store who alleged that he did not return their jewellery after they had given it to him for a repair, for example. So yeah, quite a lot of alleged bad behaviour for all this time, and you'd think someone awaiting trial for murder would be on their best behaviour, you know?
Yeah, you would.
So obviously it's been a while since that first mistrial. That was 7 years ago. But this year, the case finally came back ready to trial. And this time, the defence were making quite a lot of noise pre-trial about some of Sara's text messages. And in these text messages, Sara discussed her struggles with depression. She made comments about dying by suicide. And the messages generally appeared to show someone who was struggling, who was having a difficult time with it mentally. But I don't quite understand why this was such a bombshell, if you believe the defence. Because they had these texts in the first trial. These were all disclosed in 2016. And in some of their filings, the defence referred to them as new evidence because they were kind of re-emphasising them, or they were talking about these texts along with some actual new evidence. But they're not new. They had these, and some of these texts were actually sent to Michael himself. So he definitely knew about them.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, because they could have used these messages before but they didn't. Presumably a kind of strategic decision not to do so. And I think the reason they didn't use them, is because they also paint Michael in quite a bad light. And there's a few examples of that, and this comes from the wrongful death lawsuit that Sara's parents filed against Michael. Quote, "In the days before May the 20th, 2015, Sara Lynn communicated to her mother that she was going to leave Colucci on Saturday, May the 23rd, 2015. On the day of Sara Lynn's death, Sara Lynn telephoned her mother at approximately 3:30 p.m. Sara Lynn informed her mother that she would never go into the attorney's office again, was tired of having to look over her shoulder all the time, and that Colucci was not a good person. Sara Lynn ended that telephone call with her mother at around 4 p.m. So firstly, Sara told her mother she was going to leave Michael on May the 23rd.
Okay.
That's 3 days after she died, that she was planning to leave. And also, on the 20th itself, the day of her death, between 3:30 and 4, Sara's angry and sick of Michael.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems that she was fearful of him, saying that she was tired of having to look over her shoulder all the time.
Yeah, it sounds like fear, and I can see why she would be scared of him. But I started this section by saying there was a big bombshell before the trial, and that came before the jury had even come into the courtroom. Everything was set to go ahead, but there was one more defence motion the judge had to rule on, and that was a motion to dismiss the case, and it was filed on June the 13th, which was only 4 days before the start of the trial. And in the motion to dismiss, Michael's attorneys alleged there had been what's called a Brady violation. A Brady violation is essentially when the prosecution withholds certain exculpatory evidence from the defence. And yeah, the withheld evidence here was quite a big deal. 5 days before the trial, the prosecution disclosed to the defence that Sara's mother, Barbara Moore, had told a SLED agent, and SLED is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, an agent called David Owen, that on May the 12th, 2015, so 8 days before her death, Sara told her mother, and this is the phrasing of the defence, by the way, that, quote, she was going to commit suicide by hanging, end quote. And Agent David Owen didn't tell anyone about this.
It's just outrageous, really, that he didn't tell anybody until so late in the game that it's discovered by the defence.
Yeah, I think his hand was forced somehow, rather than him volunteering it. But yeah, he didn't tell anyone. He didn't tell the magistrate who signed the arrest warrant. That was in May 2016. Or the judge in a preliminary hearing in October 2016. He didn't mention it when he testified at the grand jury that indicted Colucci. That was November 2016. He didn't disclose it to defence attorneys during the pre-trial discovery or in his testimony during the 2018 trial. And actually, when the judge held a hearing to discuss this motion, Agent Owen admitted in court that he never documented this statement from Barbara Moore in any of his investigative reports. So nothing that was given to the prosecutors, to the defence, pathologists. He never told anyone.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and this is kind of very clearly and obviously exculpatory evidence.
Yes.
And the defence motion said that Owen's conduct, quote, the defence motion said that Owen's conduct was so grossly shocking and outrageous as to violate the universal sense of justice. And that's quite a high-minded language, but I think it's pretty fair. He should have disclosed this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this isn't the first time that Owen's work has been questioned. During this case, the defence had already filed a motion to admonish him, and that was back in May, because they claim that he didn't correct some false witness testimony at the first trial, testimony that he knew to be false. And in a case that some people might remember, the Alec Murdoch trial, Agent Owen was criticised firstly for not searching a key property for 3 months after the murders, despite having permission to do so, and then also for wrongly testifying at the grand jury that the shirt Alec Murdoch wore on the night of the murders had blood on it, and it didn't. So yeah, Judge Young decided he would quash the indictment against Colucci, and he said that, quote, "Our courts should demand better from the state." But it was quashed without prejudice, which means that Colucci can be retried, but only after the state submits it to a grand jury again first. And I'm interested to what do you think about the judge's decision on that, Ellie?
I think that if he didn't, it opened the case up to being overturned on appeal if he was found guilty. And so I think he did what he had to do, as frustrating as it is for everyone, especially Sara's family, because it drags everything on it again. But I do hope that they move forward with another grand jury and take him to trial, because I do not believe that Sara hung herself with a hose.
Yeah, perfectly said. I think the judge got this right. It's very clearly exculpatory. There is another text from the same day that Sara sent to Michael in which she also threatened suicide to shoot herself. But the difference with what she said to her mother is she was specifically talking about hanging herself. So, from the legal sense, in terms of what the judge had to do, it should definitely have been disclosed, and it's certainly exculpatory. But in terms of the actual facts of the case, and does it change how I feel about it, you have to look a bit more deeply than just what was said in court and what was in the filings. So the full picture of what transpired between Sara and her mother that day, May the 12th, 2015, Barbara went round to see Sara and noted that Sara was really struggling mentally. She was drinking. She'd been crying until her face was swollen. And Sara commented that she would hang herself if it wasn't for her daughter. And that crucial detail was omitted entirely from the defence motion. But it changes the whole meaning of that phrase. If she had just said, "I want to hang myself," that could be a threat or a plan. But if you say, "I would hang myself if it wasn't for my child," that's the words of a woman who's deeply distressed and saying, "I can't handle this," I think, more than it is a threat or a plan.
Yeah, it definitely, I agree with you on that. That saying, I have a reason to live. I'm deeply distressed. I'm hurting very much that I'm thinking about this sort of stuff, but I have a reason to live.
Yeah, 100%. And there's actually more to this as well. And I need to give Ellie her flowers for this, because we were talking about this yesterday as we were writing the episode, and I was telling you about what Sara said to her mother, and you asked me, did Michael know that Sara said that to her mom? So Ellie, why is that important if Michael knew?
So if Michael knew before Sara died, then he knew her chosen method, as it were, in order to make it match almost. So he knew that if she talked about hanging herself, that if he made it look like she'd hung herself, it would be more likely to be counted as a suicide rather than a homicide.
Exactly. And I hadn't thought of that. So, fair play. But as I was reading, a little while later, lo and behold, I found that when Sara's mum testified in the recent hearing about this issue, she had said that she was so concerned at the time about Sara that she wanted her to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital. So she told Michael Colucci what Sara said and offered to pay for her hospital admission herself. And Michael said no, declined her help. And that's interesting for several reasons. To review, Michael had had a text that day from Sara saying she was going to shoot herself. He then found out she'd also mentioned suicide to her mum, but he didn't want her to get help. So, seems quite uncaring. And not only that, as you say, Ellie, he could have staged Sara's death as a hanging to match and tailor the evidence to what she'd told her mum.
Yeah.
So, I think we've both made it pretty clear. We believe Michael Colucci murdered Sara. And at first, I thought it was possible that he had murdered Sara in the heat of passion and then hastily staged her body to look like she tried to hang herself. But the more I've read, I've actually come to the same conclusion as Ellie. I think it was most likely premeditated, and his plan was to stage it as a suicide. Because the date, or being very close to the anniversary of Sara's first husband's death, and being on the day that they had visited her grave, those are two things Michael's pointed to say, look, Sara was very distressed at the time. I do understand why people could have doubts about this, particularly because Sara was clearly struggling mentally. But mentally ill people can still be murdered. And Sara's body was cold. The garden hose that was round her neck didn't cause the injuries to her neck. And Michael had a bloody lip and scratched up arms and hands. I think those three things are enough to be very suspicious of him, and everything else kind of points at him as well. So I do hope he's indicted again and retried properly with the evidence that should have been disclosed before, and I hope that he is convicted of Sara's murder.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think if I remember this quote correctly, Tom Brennan, who was the PI in the Ellen Greenberg case, said the best way to get away with murder is to have it ruled a suicide.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
And I think that is evident in this case, personally.
Yeah, seems that way. So, if that case goes to trial in future, I'm sure we'll cover it because it is a fascinating case, and hopefully there'll be a positive resolution there and justice for Sara and for her family.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed for justice.
Definitely. Okay, so that's all the cases we've kind of got a full segment on. But there was some kind of late breaking news, Ellie, and you've written us an update on the Bryan Kohberger case from Idaho.
I have indeed. So, Bryan Kohberger is the suspect in the Idaho 4 murders, which is the murders of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Zana Knogle, and Ethan Chapin. We have consistently said during our updates on Bryan Kohberger that he should plead out, and that is what he has done. We suspect to avoid the death penalty, which was a risk he would have taken had he gone to trial, which was slated for August 18th of this year. So yeah, he's pled out. Sensible thing to do, in my opinion, from his point of view.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've made it pretty clear. The case against Kohberger was overwhelming. He would have been convicted, and this is the smart move.
Yes, definitely. Families of the victims met with the prosecutors last week to discuss the possibility of a plea deal, and prosecutors say that this meeting weighed heavily in their decision-making process. They said that they cannot fathom the toll this case has taken on the families in a letter sent by prosecutor Bill Thompson and his deputy Ashley Jennings to the families. The letter goes on to say, "This resolution is our sincere attempt to seek justice for your family. This agreement ensures that the defendant will spend the rest of his life in prison and will not be able to put you through and the other families through the uncertainty of decades of post-conviction appeals."
It's a very, yeah.
It's a very good point, that, and I think that overall, in the end, this is probably a good thing. And I think it was the right thing to do of the prosecution, despite the fact that they had the trial of their lifetimes in their laps. This was probably going to be the biggest case that they would ever try. And instead of taking that and a possible Netflix documentary and all of the drama that comes with these trials, they have worked to ensure that justice and peace is given to each of the families that are victims in this case. They have the peace of mind that he cannot appeal the verdict, and that, I think, is worth its weight in gold, knowing that he's in there and there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I get that they've had to take the death penalty off the table. But frankly, if it had been a death penalty case, there's a lot of difficulty getting a death qualified jury. Then the state has to prove Kohberger's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, prove the aggravating factors for the death sentence beyond a reasonable doubt. And it only takes one juror who thinks, I'm not sure, I'm not convinced. And so, yeah. And if they don't agree with to the death penalty, they're left with life without parole, which is what he's agreed to on the plea deal anyway. So this makes a lot of sense to me. There's not going to be appeals forever. It's over.
Yeah. That said, it does appear, and I say appear, that not all of the families are content with the plea deal. The Facebook page called the Gonzalez Family Page published a post that read, "It's true. We are beyond furious at the state of Idaho. They have failed us. Please give us some time. This was very unexpected. We appreciate all your love and support. #heartbroken. #Kaylee Jade forever." And we can't imagine what this is like for the families. Perhaps the Gonzalez family were hoping for the death penalty for Kohberger. Perhaps the chance for him to escape death when their child could not is too much for them. Perhaps they wanted it to all come out at trial, how sinister Kohberger truly was, how he planned out his actions carefully, but not carefully enough.
Yeah, and it's obvious they're not happy about it. And I get that. What I would say, though, is I do think this is what's best for the victims' families. And I think the prosecutors have made the decision to do not just what those families might want, but what is best for them. What's best for them is not the uncertainty of a trial. It's not decades of appeals. And if Kohberger had got the death penalty, what's best for the families definitely wouldn't be years of execution dates scheduled and then stayed, and an innocence fraud campaign to try and get him off death row. All of that forever and ever and ever until they might have eventually carried out the sentence. That wouldn't have been good for them. I think the prosecutors have done what's best for them. even if they may not realise it now.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. I think in all the emotion that they have, in all the pain that they have, they may not necessarily see it as the best thing for them. But I think that in time, when they have had that time, and hopefully with some support from therapists, they will come to see that although Kohberger lives to see another day, it's over.
Yeah.
And they can finally begin to grieve and say goodbye to their beloved Kaylee.
Yeah.
So
I'm so relieved this case has been resolved with a plea.
yeah, me too. Me
Because
too.
what we see in true crime at the moment is even Kohberger, who is so obviously guilty, DNA at the scene, he's on CCTV footage driving to the scene, there's a witness who puts him at the scene, the knife, and even then there were people who were saying that he's definitely innocent and accusing the surviving roommates of being involved. And there would have
Yeah.
been demonization of the families and attempts to accuse third-party suspects, dragging people through a horrible trial, a media circus. By this plea, Kohberger's guilty plea has ended the idea that he could be innocent. And if,
Yeah.
perchance, you were one of the people who thought Bryan Kohberger was innocent before this, and I don't mean legally innocent until proven guilty, you thought he was factually innocent, look at the people who was telling you that, and look at the people who were saying he's guilty, and think about who's reliable and who you should trust in the future, and that's all.
Yeah, I agree. So all that we can do now is send our love and support to all 4 families out there and hope that in the end they manage to come to peace with this plea deal and that at last they are able to begin to heal.
Definitely, yeah. And I hope this is the start of them being able to heal for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this week, guys. That's all we've got for you. We will be back next week. In the meantime, you can follow us pretty much anywhere on social media at Version of Events. You can get in touch with us at versionevents@gmail.com or via DMs to our social medias. You can even subscribe to our YouTube channel, especially if you've got YouTube Premium. That might be a good way for you to listen in the future. And I think that's mentioned everything.
Yeah, I think so. Remember to get in touch with us if you've got a case suggestion or someone to cover on missing and marginalised. We love to hear from you guys. Yeah, that's all we've got from this week.
Oh, and you can also join our group, the Versionaries, the Version of Events discussion group. We'd love to see you there. That would be great.
Yeah, join the fun in there, guys, our Facebook group.
Yeah, and don't forget to give us a cheeky 5-star review and follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Right, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.